Stage 4. The Shadow of Death. As Christian began to set off, discretion, piety, charity, and prudence decided to accompany him down to the foot of the hill. So they continued their former conversations together until they began to go down the mountain. Then Christian said, "As it was difficult coming up, so far as I can see, it is just as dangerous going down." "Yes," said Prudence, "so it is. For it is a hard matter for a man to go down into the valley of humiliation, as you are now, and avoid slipping on the way." "This is why," they said, "we are coming out to accompany you down the hill." So he began to go down, but very warily. Even so, he slipped once or twice. Then I saw in my dream that these good companions, when Christian had arrived at the bottom of the hill, gave him a loaf of bread, a bottle of wine, and a cluster of raisins. And then he went on his way. While Christian is among his godly friends, their golden mouths make him sufficient mends for all his griefs, and when they let him go, he's clad with northern steel from top to toe. But now in this valley of humiliation, poor Christian was struggling. He had gone only a little way before he caught sight of a foul fiend coming over the field to meet him, whose name was Apollyon. Christian became afraid and contemplated whether to go back or stand his ground. But Christian considered again that he had no armor for his back, so if he turned his back, Apollyon could easily pierce him with his darts. Christian resolved to risk standing his ground, for, he thought, had I no other aim than the saving of my life, it would be the best way to stand. So he went on, and Apollyon met him. Now the monster was hideous to behold. He was clothed with scales like a fish, which are his pride. He had wings like a dragon and feet like a bear, and out of his belly came fire and smoke, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. When he approached Christian, he beheld him disdainfully and began to question him. Apollyon inquired, "For where have you come, and to where are you bound?" Christian replied, "I have come from the city of destruction, which is the place of all evil, and I am going to the city of Zion." "By this I understand you are one of my subjects, for all that country is mine, and I am the prince and god of it. How is it then that you have run away from your king? If I did not hope you may do me more service, I would strike you down now at one blow to the ground." "I was indeed born in your dominions," said Christian, "but your service was hard, and your wages were such that a man could not live on, for the wages of sin is death. For that reason, when I came of age, I considered whether it might be possible to restore myself." Romans 6:23. "For the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord." "There is not a prince that would so lightly lose his subjects, and I would not lose you even now," said Apollyon. "But since you complain of your service and wages, be content to go back in what our country can afford. I promise now to give to you." "But I have pledged myself to another, to the King of Princes," Christian replied. "So how can I with fairness go back with you?" "You have done this in accordance with the proverb, 'Change the bad for a worse.' But it is ordinary for those who have professed themselves to be his servants after a while to give him the slip and return again to me. You too may do this, and all shall be well." To this Christian replied, "I have given him my faith and sworn my allegiance to him. How can I go back from this and not be hanged as a traitor?" "You did the same to me, and yet I am willing to let it pass, if now you will turn around and go back." "What I promised you was in my youth, and besides, I take into account that the prince, under whose banner I now stand, is able to absolve me. Yes, and to also pardon what I did in regard to my compliance with you. And besides, you destroying Apollyon to speak the truth, I like his service, his wages, his servants, his government, his company, and country better than yours. So stop trying to persuade me, Father. I am his servant, and I will follow him." "Consider all this again when your blood has cooled," said Apollyon. "What you are most likely to encounter on the way you will go. You know that for the most part his servants come to an ill end because they are transgressors against me and my ways. How many of them have been put to shameful deaths? You consider his service better than mine, while on the contrary, he still has never come from the place where he is to deliver any that served him out of their enemies' hands. But as for me, how many times, as all the world very well knows, have I delivered, either by power or fraud, those that have faithfully served me, from him and his, though taken by them, and so will I deliver you." Christian responded, "His patient restraint at present to deliver them is on purpose to test their love, whether they will be faithful to him to the end. And as for the ill end that you say they come to, that is most glorious in their account. For as to present deliverance, they do not much expect it, as they remain for that glorious prize, and then they shall have it, when their prince comes in his and the glory of the angels." "You have already been unfaithful in your service to him," said Apollyon. "So why do you expect to receive wages from him?" "In what respect, O Apollyon, have I been unfaithful to him?" asked Christian. Apollyon retorted, "You fainted at first setting out when you were almost choked in the slough of despond. You attempted wrong ways to rid your burden when you should have waited till your prince had taken it off. You sinfully slept and lost your best things. You were also almost persuaded to go back at the sight of the lions. And when you talk about your journey and what you have seen and heard, you are inwardly desirous of admiration in all that you say or do." "All this is true," replied Christian, "and much more which you have left out. But the prince I serve and honor is merciful and ready to forgive. But besides, these weaknesses possess me in your country, for it was there I sucked them in, and I have groaned under them, been sorry for them, and have obtained pardon from my prince." Then Apollyon broke out in a grievous rage, saying, "I am an enemy to the prince. I hate his person, his laws, and his people. I have come out on purpose to oppose you." Christian replied, "Apollyon, beware what you do, for I am on the king's highway, the way of holiness. So watch what you do." Apollyon then straddled himself entirely over the whole width of the path and said, "I am void of fear in this matter. Prepare yourself to die, for I swear by my infernal den that you shall go no further. Here I will spill your soul." And with that he threw a flaming dart at Christian's chest. But Christian had a shield in his hand, with which he caught it, preventing its danger. Then Christian drew his sword, for he saw it was time to do something himself, as Apollyon had quickly charged at him, throwing darts as thick as hail. It was all that Christian could do to avoid it. Even so, Apollyon wounded him in his head, hand, and foot, which made Christian fall back a little. Apollyon then vigorously followed his work, and Christian again took courage and resisted as manfully as he could. This agonizing combat lasted for more than a half a day, even to the point that Christian was almost quite spent. For you must know that Christian, due to his wounds, had grown weaker and weaker. Then Apollyon, noticing his opportunity, began to gather up close to Christian. While wrestling with him, he gave him a dreadful fall, which caused Christian's sword to fly out of his hand. Then Apollyon said, "I am sure of you now." And with that, he had almost crushed him to death. So Christian began to despair of life. But as God would have it, while Apollyon was delivering his last blow, to inevitably make a full end of this good man, Christian nimbly reached out his hand for his sword and caught it, saying, "Rejoice not over me, O my enemy. When I shall fall, I shall arise." Micah 7:8. "Rejoice not over me, my enemy, when I fall. I shall rise when I sit in darkness. The Lord will be a light to me." And with that, Christian gave a deadly thrust, which caused Apollyon to fall back, as one who had received his mortal wound. Christian, believing that, went at him again, saying, "In fact, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." And with that, Apollyon spread forth his dragon wings and mounted away, and Christian saw him no more. Romans 8:37. In all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. James 4:7. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. In this combat, no man can imagine, unless he had seen and heard, as I did, what yelling and hideous roaring Apollyon made throughout the fight. He roared like a dragon. Meanwhile, on the other side, what sighs and groans burst from Christian's heart. In all that time, I never saw him give so much as one pleasant look, till he realized he had wounded Apollyon with his two-edged sword. Then he smiled indeed, and looked upward. But it was the most dreadful fight that I ever saw. After the battle was over, Christian said, "I will give thanks to him that has delivered me out of the mouth of the lion, to him that helped me against Apollyon." And so he did, saying, "Great Beelzebub, the captain of this fiend, designed my ruin, therefore to this end. He sent him harnessed out, and he with rage, that hellish was, did fiercely me engage. But blessed Michael helped me, and I, by blow of sword, did quickly make him fly. Therefore to God let me give lasting praise, and thank and bless his holy name always." Then there came to him a hand with some of the leaves of the tree of life. Christian took them and applied them to the wounds he had received in the battle, and was healed immediately. He also sat down in that place to eat bread and drink from the bottle that was given to him a little before. So being refreshed, he prepared himself for his journey, and with his sword drawn in his hand, he said, "I don't know if some other enemy may be at hand." But he did not meet with any other attack from Apollyon within this valley. Now at the end of this valley was another, called the Valley of the Shadow of Death. Christian had to go through it because the way to the celestial city lay through the midst of it. Now this valley is a very solitary place. The prophet Jeremiah describes it as a wilderness in a land of deserts and pits, in a land of drought and deep darkness, in a land that none but a pilgrim passes through, where no man dwells. Jeremiah 2:6. They did not say, "Where is the Lord who brought us up from the land of Egypt, who led us in the wilderness, in a land of deserts and pits, in a land of drought and deep darkness, in a land that none passes through, where no man dwells"? Christian experienced more difficulty here than in his fight with Apollyon, as you will see in the end. I saw in my dream that when Christian arrived at the borders of the shadow of death, he met two men, children of those who brought up an evil report of the good land, making haste to go back. Numbers 13:32. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are full of great height." Christian began to speak to them as follows. "Where are you going?" asked Christian. The two men said, "Back, back, and we would suggest you do so too, if you prize either your life or peace." "Why, what's the matter?" said Christian. "Matter," they said. We're going the same way you are, and went as far as we dare. And indeed we almost did not make it back, for had we gone a little further, we would not be here today to bring the news to you." "But what did you encounter?" said Christian. The two men said, "Why, we were almost in the valley of the shadow of death, when by good fortune we looked before us, saw the danger before we came to it." Psalm 44:19. "Yet you have broken us in the place of jackals, and covered us with the shadow of death." "But what have you seen?" said Christian. "Seen? Why, the valley itself, which is as dark as pitch," said the two men. "We also saw hobgoblins, satyrs, and dragons of the pit. We heard continual howling and yelling in the valley, as if people under unutterable misery were sitting there bound in affliction and irons. And over that valley hung the discouraging clouds of confusion. Death also always spread his wings over it. In a word, it is every bit dreadful, utterly without order." Job 10:22. "The land of gloom like thick darkness, like deep shadow without any order, where light is as thick as darkness." "Then," Christian said, "although I cannot fathom it, from what you have said, I do know that this is the way to my desired heaven. Psalm 44:18 and 19. Our heart has not turned back, nor have our steps departed from your way. Yet you have broken us in the place of jackals and covered us with the shadow of death. Be it your way, said the two men. We will not choose it for ourselves. Jeremiah 2:6. Where is the Lord, who led us in the wilderness, in a land of deserts and pits, in a land of drought and deep darkness, in a land that none passes through, where no man dwells? So they parted, and Christian went on his way, still with the sword drawn in his hand, for fear that he would be assaulted. I saw in my dream that as far as this valley reached, there was a very deep ditch on the right hand, a ditch into which the blind have led the blind throughout the ages, and have both miserably perished there. Again, behold, on the left hand, there was a dangerous boggy place into which, even if a good man fell, he would find no bottom for his foot to stand on. King David once fell into that bog, believing it would have smothered him if he who was able had not plucked him out. Psalm 69:14. Deliver me from sinking in the mire. The pathway here was also exceedingly narrow, which is why good Christian experienced even more hardship. For as he sought, in the dark, to avoid the ditch on the one side, he was prepared to stumble into the miry bog on the other. And while Christian sought to avoid the mire, he was attentive to keep from falling into the ditch. So he went on, and I heard him sigh bitterly at this point. For on top of the danger mentioned above, the pathway here was so dark that often, when he lifted up his foot to go forward, he did not know where or upon what he should set it next. About halfway through this valley, I realized this to be where the mouth of hell was, and that it stood close by the side of the path. Now, thought Christian, what shall I do? Psalm 107:19. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. And occasionally the flame and smoke would come out in such an abundance with sparks and hideous noises, things that were not deterred by Christian's sword, as Apollyon was before. He was forced to put away his sword and to shift to another weapon called all prayer. So he cried within my hearing, O Lord, I beg of you, deliver my soul. Ephesians 6:18. Praying at all times in the Spirit, with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints. Psalm 116:4. Then I called on the name of the Lord. O Lord, I pray, deliver my soul. So he went on for a great while. Even still the flames would reach towards him. He also heard mournful voices and quick movements to and fro. So he sometimes thought he would be torn in pieces or trodden upon like mud in the streets. This frightful sight was seen, and these dreadful noises were heard by him for several miles together. And coming to a place where he thought he heard a company of fiends coming forward to meet him, Christian stopped and considered what he should do. Sometimes he had half a mind to go back. Then he considered how he might already be halfway through the valley. He also remembered how he had already vanquished many dangers, and that the danger of going back might be much more than that of going forward. So he resolved to go on, even though the fiends seemed to come nearer and nearer. But when they came even almost at him, he cried out with the most passionate voice, I will walk in the strength of the Lord God. So they kept back and came no farther. One thing I would not let slip. I noticed how poor Christian was now so mixed up that he did not know his own voice. And this is how I came to realize it. Just when he was about to go over up against the mouth of the burning pit, one of the wicked ones got behind him and stepped up softly to him. It whispered and suggested many grievous blasphemies to him, which he truly thought had proceeded from his own mind. To even think of cursing the one that he loved so much was more distressing to Christian than anything he had met with before. Yet, if he could not have helped it, he would not have done it. But he did not have the discretion to stop up his ears or to know from where these blasphemies came. When Christian had traveled in this downcast condition for some considerable time, he thought he heard the voice of a man ahead of him saying, Psalm 23:4, Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Then he was glad for several reasons. First, he discovered that in this valley there were others who also feared God as he did. He then realized God was with them, even in that dark and dismal state. Job 9:11. Behold, he passes by me, and I see him not. He moves on, but I do not perceive him. And why not, thought he, with us? It is the difficulties present here that make it difficult to see. Then he hoped he could meet up with them to eventually have some company. So Christian pressed on and called out to the voice he had previously heard. But he did not know if he would receive an answer, as he thought he might still be completely alone. And before long it was daybreak. Then Christian said, "He has turned the shadow of death into the morning." Amos 5:8. He who made the Pleiades and Orion, and turns deep darkness into the morning, and darkness the day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the surface of the earth. The Lord is his name. When morning finally came, he looked back, not out of a desire to return, but to see by the light of the day what hazards he had gone through in the dark. He saw more perfectly the ditch on the one side and the bog on the other. He saw how narrow the way was which led between them both. He also now saw the hobgoblins, satyrs, and dragons of the pit. But from far away, for after dawn, they would not come near. Even so it was revealed to him according to that which is written. He uncovers deep things out of darkness, and brings to light the shadow of death. Job 12:22. He uncovers the deeps out of darkness, and brings deep darkness to light. Now Christian was greatly affected by how he was kept safe and delivered from all the dangers of his solitary way. Though he feared these dangers much before, he saw them more distinctly now because the light of the day had made them clearly visible to him. And about this time the sun was rising, which was another mercy to Christian. For you must note that though the first part of the valley of the shadow of death was dangerous, this second part which he was yet to go was, if possible, far more dangerous. For from the place where he stood now, all along to the end of the valley, the way was set so full of snares, traps, devices, and nets here, and so full of pits, pitfalls, deep holes, and downward slopes there. Had it now been dark, as it was when he came the first part of the way, even if he had 1,000 souls, they would have, in reason, been cast away. But, as I said just now, the sun was rising. So Christian said, "His lamp shines upon my head, and by his light I walk through darkness." In this light, he reached the end of the valley at last. Job 29:3. When his lamp shone upon my head, and by his light I walked through darkness. Now I saw in my dream that at the end of the valley lay blood, bones, ashes, and mangled bodies of men, even of pilgrims that had gone this way before him. And while I was pondering what should be the reason for this, my eyes made out a cave a little before me, where two giants, Pope and Pagan, dwelt in old times, by whose power and tyranny the men of those bones, blood, ashes, and the rest who lay there were cruelly put to death. But by this place Christian passed without much danger, at which I somewhat wondered. But I have learned since that Pagan has been dead for a while. And as for the other, though he may still be alive, he is of reasonably old age, and also because of the many shrewd skirmishes that Pope met with him in his younger days, he has grown so crazy and stiff in his joints that he can now do little more than sit in his cave's mouth, grinning at pilgrims as they go by, and biting his nails because he cannot go at them. So I saw that Christian went on his way. When he saw the old giant sitting at the mouth of the cave, he didn't know what to think, especially because the old giant spoke to him, though the giant could not reach him, saying, "You pilgrims will never change your ways, till more of you are burned." But Christian held his peace and put a good face on, and so went by and was not hurt. Then Christian sang, "O world of wonders, I can say no less, that I should be preserved in that distress that I have met with here. O blessed be that hand that from it has delivered me. Dangers and darkness, devils, hell and sin, did surround me, while I to this vale was in. Yes, snares and pits and traps and nets did lie my path about that worthless, silly I might have been caught, entangled, and cast down. But since I live, let Jesus wear the crown."